So this is throttle only. Going 13 miles an hour, no problem. And if I go to fourth gear, throttle only, no problem. Fifth gear, throttle only. See the skip? Sixth gear, throttle only. A lot of skipping. Seventh gear, no more skipping. So it looks like the damage is on the fifth and sixth gear. Hello and welcome to Random Things. This is Ty, and for this video, it's part 2 of my 1500 mile maintenance on the XPremium. So in the first video, I kind of went through all the things I suspect needed to work on, and I'll put a link in the description box below to link to the first video if you haven't seen that. And in that video, we showed that the chain has stretched to a point where it needed to be replaced. And you need to replace that chain before it starts doing damage to the actual freewheel itself. But after I changed the chain, and what you saw in the intro video is that the chain was kind of popping and skipping on the 6th and 5th gear. So the second smallest and the third smallest cogs, right? So I think what's happening is when the chain gets worn, right, and it starts to stretch, and it's a gradual process, as that chain stretches and gets worn, well, actually it doesn't really stretch, it just gets worn, it will start to wear down the actual gap in between the teeth. And for me, for those 1500 miles, I primarily rode on the 6th and 5th gear on pedal assist mode 3 and 4. Rarely was I riding in pedal assist 5 on the 7th gear. So I did most of the wear and tear on the 6th and 5th gear. And when you look at the gear, it doesn't look like there's much wear, but after I put a new chain on, we didn't experience any kind of popping or slipping on the upper gears, which I don't ride that often, or even the 7th gear, which I also don't ride that often. Just those two gears, the two cogs that I primarily ride on. And so, what I believe is happening is because of the chain wear, it actually simultaneously also wore down and wore out these two gears. Now you can't just replace these two cogs, so you actually have to replace the entire freewheel. Now, amazingly, I had talked to Lectric, and I was just checking to see, well, they sent me a replacement chain, even though I think that's kind of a wear and tear item. Would they send me a replacement freewheel? And lo and behold, after I explained to them that, you know, I've thoroughly gone through it and it's not a chain adjustment issue, they sent me a new freewheel. That is some excellent customer service, because I really believe it's a wear and tear item, and they don't necessarily need to give you a new freewheel, but they did, and that's just quite amazing. Now, in the event that in the future they say, well, it really is a wear and tear item and that you really should just buy a new freewheel and replace it on your own, there are options. Right now you cannot buy the freewheel on the Lectric website for the XPremium. And when I tried going on Amazon looking for this particular freewheel, I actually had a really hard time finding it. It is a 32, so it's got 32 teeth on the biggest gear, and it is a 12 on the smallest gear. And so that 32-12 combination, that's actually not that easy to find. What you primarily find is something like this, which is a 14 by 34. So the big cog is actually a little bit bigger than the one that's on the Lectric right now, but the little cog is actually also a little bit bigger. It's got 14 teeth as opposed to 12 teeth. Now the reason why that matters is when you're pedaling really fast, you need smaller gears here in order to not ghost pedal. And I have other videos, and there's plenty of other videos talking about ghost pedaling on the electric bikes. But the way to kind of avoid ghost pedaling at high pedal assist modes and speeds is to go with a smaller 7th gear. So in other words, a 12-tooth 7th gear, or another one that's commonly found on Amazon is one like this. And this one, it's a 34 by 11. So it's got, again, 34 teeth on the big gear, which is more than the standard OEM equipment. And then on the smallest gear, the 7th gear, it's actually only got 11 tooth as opposed to 12 tooth, which means that it actually, per revolution, you're going to get more push or more turn on your wheel. And so you get even less ghost pedaling, or you're able to put more force onto the tires and go faster. Or maybe not necessarily faster, but remember the way the motor works is it wants to take you to 28 miles an hour. And once you get there, you might get a little bit faster, but what it's going to do is it says, well, you're already at 28. I'm just going to back off on the current that I use to help you pedal, right? And so you're still only going to go 28, but you're going to be using more legs and less battery. And so this one, after tax on Amazon and after the coupons I found and discounts, the cheapest I found is 35 bucks. Now this one, after coupons and everything, was only $23. And so this is a little cheaper than this, but this was warranty replacement. So that's pretty amazing, but you can get replacement freewheels. Now we talked about the difference on the 7th gear, but because the 1st gear, the biggest cog, is bigger than a standard OEM equipment, I am curious if the chain length needs to be adjusted. So I'm gonna put one of these on, just in case that people want to see, and then I'm gonna see if the chain length needs to be adjusted at all, or I can use the existing chain length I used when I measured it out in part 1. And so I'm going to replace, instead of using the OEM equipment for this example, I'm actually going to use this particular freewheel. One, because I think if Lectric decides that in the future it is not going to warranty an OEM replacement with a 12 by 32 freewheel, then this is the cheapest option out there, which is a 14 by 34. So it's more for a climbing kind of bike and not for top speed kind of riding. And when you use bigger teeth in the back, you actually put less stress on the chain. You're not going to go as fast, but you do put less stress on it. That's just like if you go to the biggest cog, that's how you should start, because it puts less stress. It's like starting a manual car, in 1st gear. Unless you're my wife. Then you try to start in like 4th or 5th gear. Just kidding, wife. Anyway, so I'm going to try and put this on and see if it makes a difference. And then we'll see how that goes and whether or not the popping stops. So I will go through actually removing the freewheel, the tire and the freewheel, and then putting this on. But if you don't want to watch all that because you're relatively mechanically inclined, go ahead and skip this part and go to the end, and we'll talk about how this works out in the wrap-up. Okay, so to remove the wheel on the XPremium, it's a bit easier than the XP because you don't have the motor wire, the motor control wire, going through the hollow axle into the rear hub. You just have to kind of take the brake cable and then remove the nut so that you can remove the derailleur protector bracket and the nut on this side, which is just the number 15 metric wrench. and then you should be able to slide the tire out. So let's go and get started. Hopefully that's not famous last words, right? And again, when you cut these zip ties that hold all the control wires, just be very careful that you don't actually cut the wire itself. So take your time and make sure you cut the right thing, because it'd be a pain to have to redo everything. Okay, so now I can unplug the cable that controls the brake lights so that I can now remove, because it was kind of threaded through the derailleur protector, so I need to remove the derailleur protector so I can pull the tire out. Now there is a kind of a locking ring here that you need to use an Allen wrench to remove this, because this is kind of a, just in case your nut comes loose, your tires don't come flying off. This is kind of a retaining ring that kind of holds everything in place. So you have to remove this. There's one on each side. That looks like just a plain old number 5. Just remember that goes there. I'll take it off on this side. Okay, so you should be able to just slide the tire out now. Okay, so there's a washer on the inside of here that goes here. So I'm gonna leave it here. Just have to remember to put that in. Okay, so now that we have the wheel off of the bike, we actually need to remove the freewheel itself. To do that, you need a freewheel removal tool. And this is very much the same as if you had an XP 2.0. This part, removing the freewheel, is the same, whether it's an XPremium like this bike, or an XP 2.0, or even a 3.0, or 1.0. So this freewheel removal tool is from Part Tool. It's actually a very nice tool, but what I find sometimes is it doesn't go in deep enough. See that? So I need a deeper tool so I can get in there deeper and actually get to it. And so I had to buy this one so that I can get further down in there. And so I'll put a link in the description box so that you can get this tool, so if you need it. Okay, so I had this on the table and it was really tight. So what I'm going to do is put it on the floor, and I'm going to put a crescent wrench on it. And the reason why is because I'm going to put a cheater bar on it. So, cheater bar, just some square tubing to allow me to get some more leverage. And then, let's see if I can crank it loose. There it goes. So you want to steady pressure, not just, terrorize it. You don't want to round out the splines that are in there. Now that I've loosened it, I'm just going to go ahead and finish taking it off. And it's just threaded. There it goes. So there's just a set of threads here, right, that threads on to the axle. So as we talked about in the intro video, we're going to go ahead and use this one. Now, I'll show you the difference between this one, real quick, and the OEM freewheel. See how the splines on these come all the way to the edge? So for something like this, you might be able to use the part tool kit. But on this one, see how it's, I don't know why, but they don't take it all the way to the end. And so it won't make it in there. So that's why you have to get the kind of a deep socket to do it. So as we talked about, or as I talked about in the intro video, I'm going to put a 34 by 14 on here, just to see how that would work. Mostly because this is a $23 replacement. Now again, Lectric replaced the freewheel, but in case you're not able to get a warranty replacement freewheel, I wanted to see if I bought a freewheel and I used this one, which is the cheaper one compared to the 34 by 11, which I know that I won't get any ghost pedaling with the 11th cog on the 7th gear. I want to know if I can use this one and whether or not I would get any ghost pedaling problems. So that's why I wanted to do this test and use this freewheel. So that's what I got. Okay, now, so if we remember the order, we'll put this on first. I think it's a spacer. And then we'll slip this in. Just line it up with the brakes. And then it's in. Make sure you put your retaining screw on so that in case you have a mishap and didn't put this back on tight enough, your wheel's not going to fall off on you. I'm just checking to see if I hear any brake rub. So, sounds pretty good. Now, although these are pretty worn pads, and part 3 will be actually replacing the pads. So, stay tuned for that. But right now, with the old pads, it's alright. So here's the master link right there. I'm going to use this little tool to kind of give me some slack. And that's going to let me remove the master link or take the chain back apart by squeezing. And then should be able to pop it like that. So now we want to remeasure. But to do that, we want to take it off the jockey wheels and then put it on, obviously there's only one gear in the front, put on the big gear in the back and see if it's okay. The way we measure is, again, now that it's on the biggest gear in the back, front gear, you wouldn't put it here, right? Because you need to connect to the inner plate. So it's here, and then back off 2 rivets, 1, 2. So that is correct. And so going to a 34T will not need to add links to your chain. So that's good news. So let me just put this back together. Back together so that I have some space to work, some slack to work. Okay, let me get my master links. There. Now it's snapped back into place. There you have it. We do need to check the derailleur adjustments. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm not going to, now that we made sure the chain will fit this new freewheel, I'm going to go ahead and run through the derailleur adjustments. However, I'm not going to bore you with that. You can look at the part 1 video that will go through how I do that. So Lectric has a video on how to ride the mid-drive bike, and they suggest that you start in first gear, and then as you progressively ride faster, shift to a higher gear or a smaller cog. I find that going all the way to first gear when I'm coming up to a stoplight, it's not really necessary unless the stoplight is leading to a hill. For me, if I just push up to third gear, which is the third biggest cog, that's already a pretty good starting point to start out from a dead stop. And then I would then drop down into the desired gear. And again, my jam is really pedal assist 4 in 6th gear. I find that to be the best. But now that I have a 14 small tooth, I may have to ride in 7th gear just so that I can not have to ghost pedal. So let's take this out and see if I have any gear jumping with this new freewheel. Okay, so we're looking to test out two things. One is, do we still get chain popping, which is quite annoying. 1, 2nd gear, 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, 6th gear, 7th gear. Throttle only, going 20 miles an hour. Alright, no skipping on the chain. So that part of it is good. So now what we want to do is, as we ride on PAS 4 and 5, whether or not I'm going to actually end up ghost pedaling as I try to reach 28 miles an hour. And if I can get to 28 miles an hour using the bigger gears. Okay, so we're in 7th gear, and I'm pedaling on PAS 4, but I'm starting to get to pretty close to free pedal. I'm not actually getting a whole lot of resistance, and I'm only getting 21 miles an hour. So looks like that 1434 might be too big, and I'm not going to be able to go very fast on those gears. Okay, I bumped it up to PAS 5. Let's see if I can get to 28 miles an hour pedaling. Nope. So about 24 miles an hour is the top speed I can get. It's starting to get really like ghost pedaling. I'm not going to be able to get much faster than 24 miles an hour. I'm starting to spin here. I'm not going to get much more out of it. Unfortunately, the 1434 freewheel did not work in the sense that although it got rid of the popping and skipping of the chain because it's a brand new gear, it didn't allow me to achieve that 28 miles an hour in pedal assist 5 because basically 14 is just too big. It needs to be at least a 12. In this case, I put the 1134 on, so let's check it out. Okay, so now we're on PAS 5, 5th gear. Let's see, where does it want to take me? Okay, 6th gear. Alright. No popping, that's good. 7th gear. There's popping on the 7th gear, which I don't like. Okay, so the 34 by 11 was clicking at the 7th gear, the smallest cog. So I quickly changed it out to the OEM freewheel, which is now 32 by 12. So let's see if, how this the one does. Okay, here we go. PS5, 6th gear, 7th gear. Feel the resistance, feel the burn. Okay, we're getting up to that running on the road again. But key there is no popping and skipping on the gears. So that worked out good. So it looks like we're going to have to stick with these gears. So we started this video showing you that in 7th gear I was not experiencing any chain slippage or popping with the new chain, but using the old freewheel. But when I went to 6th and 5th gear, I was experiencing a lot of popping. And so what I've concluded was that in that 1,500 miles of riding just before changing that chain, I mostly rode on 5th and 6th gear. And so in that process, I worn out 5th and 6th gear. So it was time for us to change the freewheel along with the chain. Now I already changed the chain in the first video, and so that's why the new chain didn't actually fit in the gap as well, because the gaps have been worn out, and so the chain didn't fit in there very well. And so I reached out to Lectric to see what they can do. To my amazement, they actually sent me a new freewheel. Now that is some excellent customer service, because I would have expected them to tell me that that is a wear and tear item. Now, having said that, because I was expecting them to tell me that it was a wear and tear item, I went on Amazon looking for other freewheels that was compatible. What I found was a 14 by 34 and then also a 11 by 34 freewheel. Now the OEM freewheel is a 12 by 32. Now I was really grateful that Lectric sent me the OEM freewheel, because the 12 by 32 was actually really hard to find. I don't think I actually found one, but then again, I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I'm going to find one. But it's just not common. What was really more common was the 14 by 34 or 14 by 28 or 11 by 34 or 11 by 28. Those were the more common combinations. And so when I changed out the freewheel, I wanted to try to use one of these more common freewheels that you can get on Amazon, in case that Lectric didn't provide me with a replacement freewheel. And what we learned was, with a 14 by 34, you can put that on there using the existing chain measurement, so you don't have to adjust the chain length, and it will ride fine. And with the new freewheel, I didn't actually experience any popping or skipping. The problem was on 7th gear, because it had 14 tooth instead of 12 tooth, it didn't allow me to pedal very fast. So in other words, when I got to about that ghost pedaling revolution rate, I was only about 24, 25 miles an hour. And so really I needed to get to 12 tooth on the 7th gear in order for me to ride the bike to about 28 miles an hour. Now when I changed it to the 11 by 34, thinking, hey, 12 by 32, I can get to 28 miles an hour. The 11, I should be able to get to 28 miles an hour. And theoretically, yes, you can. But I was experiencing a different problem now, where I was actually getting that popping. And so it didn't like being on that 11th tooth gear with all that torque. Maybe if I adjusted the chain tension by maybe shortening a link, that may allow me to ride in that 11th tooth gear. But given that I didn't want to test that out, I had concluded that, you know what, let me just throw on the OEM 12x32 and see what happens. And it turned out, when I threw on the 12x32, everything was fine. So I got to my target speeds and I didn't get any skipping and popping with the new freewheel. So, conclusion is, I got to use that 12x32 for now. If I have more time, maybe I'll try to experiment more with the 11x34. And for those of you out there who actually have successfully used the 11x34, if you want to drop me a note for me as well as anybody else that's watching this video on what you did and how you made it work, or what experiences that you learned, that would be really helpful. So with that, I think we got the drivetrain dialed in now. And now we're going to move on to brake pads. So that will be part 3 of this 1500 mile maintenance video series. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit the like and share button. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. That will really help me out. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next random video, which I think will be part 3, where I do the brakes and front tire rotation. With that, cheers.